Okay, come on, make it happen. Watching, and we go public. And we'll just sort that out and make sure it's there. It is there, that's good. Okay, pop out the chat. And copy that link, put that down, bring it over. Bear with me, just setting up properties. Paste. And alright. Looks like it's in. Cool. That looks like it's working. And we'll just check. Is it updating? Is it updating? Yes, it is. Good. Excellent. That worked out well. Cool. Drink of water and then we'll get going. Alright, let's get rid of this earplug. It is a horrible wet day today, so a good day to be doing this. My intention was to do this video a long time ago, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it, and like my little message says, I'm going to answer the questions at the end, but you can post your questions in the chat as we go. I just won't answer them straight away. I'll get to the very end and then I'll deal with that sort of stuff. And if there are any problems with the video or the sound, as always, you just let me know. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I'm going to talk about monster tactics for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Now, we're going to talk about the Rust Monster. I talked about the Rust Monster in one of my monster tactics workshops a little while back, but I just covered it very briefly. I didn't go into all the details. And I thought today what I would do is actually cover it in more depth and sort of fill out all the little bits that I might have missed. So what I've given you is basically a map, some dice, some miniatures. Our adventurers are exploring some cave locations and they've come across a single rust monster who is feeding off some rusted ore, or some ore that's rusting the ore and then consuming that. That's what a rust monster does. It's a very strange creature. It's a completely weird monster. There's so many weird monsters in Dungeons and Dragons, but this is certainly one of the strangest. And it's not really a combat monster. So if you want to find details for the Rust Monster, have a look on page 262 of the Monster Manual for the Rust Monster. Oh my, I've got a storm outside. The Rust Monster is so strange that it doesn't eat flesh. It actually rusts metal and then consumes that rust. And it's really not interested in meat or vegetables. So it's not like this thing is going to attack something and then try to consume it. All it wants to do is go after the metal so it can rust it and consume that. This means that a party of adventurers is the last thing that a rust monster is interested in. They're not really interested in the adventurers, they're only interested in the metal on them so that they can rust it. And truthfully, they would not go after a group of adventurers. They're more likely to stumble across a group or one rust monster rusting some metal. The simple fact is, it doesn't want to have to get into a fight. It just wants to eat. It just wants to feed. It just wants the metal. So in most cases, when you're dealing with a rust monster, it'll just be probably consuming metal items or a structure that's metal that is abandoned, where there's nobody around whatsoever. There's no creatures, no humanoids, nothing that can give it any kind of hassle. It's far more likely that the adventuring party, as I said, would stumble across a rust monster, and then, it's probably not going to attack a group of adventurers. What it's likely to do is it's going to go after one adventurer, provided it doesn't have a sharp pointy thing that it can stick at that rust monster. Now, rust monster has a reasonable armor class. It's a 14. It's got natural armor because it's got an insectoid carcass on it. It's got plates all over it, so it's got some natural protection, but that's not going to solve the problem. It doesn't really need that hassle. Rust monsters would be hunted to extinction. There wouldn't be a single rust monster left if they actually engaged in fights every time they came across something. So the chances are, when they come across a rust monster that's feeding, it's going to run away. I would imagine that a smart group of adventurers would probably decide to run away or shoot it from a distance. You don't want to get too close. That's the concept. So how do you use a rust monster if the rust monster is likely to run away and the adventurers are probably going to avoid getting into combat, so you can't actually do anything with the rust monster because nobody's getting close enough to actually use that rusting ability? Well, here we go. We're going to deal with that right now. Rust monsters can detect metal. It has an iron scent, and it can detect metal up to 30 feet. So it can detect metal through another object or location, possibly embedded in something, but there's going to be limitations to that, and that's really up to you as the dungeon master to determine how that would work. So just because there's cloth over the adventurer's armor doesn't mean it won't be able to detect that it has some sort of metal on them. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Your average rust monster will be drawn to the metal on probably the one character who has the most metal on them. That's if they were to actually pursue them. So, for example, this group of 4 adventurers, this little rust monster's not going to go after it. No. Get rid of them. Get rid of that one. Now the rust monster might consider coming over and checking out this individual with the plate armor. That's essentially what we're dealing with. But as soon as you pull out a hammer and you start trying to attack it, it's probably going to scarper off. That's really what it's up to. That's how it would work. And that's how I would play the rust monster in this situation. So, rust monsters usually attack if provoked. So if you were to push it into a location where it's got no escape, so let's say it's backed up into a corner and you've got all your adventurers sort of tricking out and stopping it from getting out, so it can't escape, there's no way out, then it's going to probably try to attack. But remember, it's got to be cornered. You've got to force it into a location where it has no other choice but to attack back or try to get past the adventurers. It might actually just use a disengage or a dash to try to escape. That is how I would play a rust monster if you're going to have a situation where it's going to engage in a fight. So there's not a lot of situations where rust monsters will actually attack. So non-magical weapons made of metal that hit this particular rust monster. So let's say we're not dealing with a hammer here. Let's say this is a metal head on the hammer. Okay, it's not a stone hammer. It's got a metal head. Every time you hit this rust monster, that particular weapon is going to suffer a -1 penalty to damage rolls due to the fact that it's rusting. So if you hit the creature, you're rusting your weapon. So it's one thing you do not want to do as a player is you don't want to be hitting it with metal weapons. Now most of the players will know this. If they don't, they're going to find out the hard way, but they'll figure it out pretty quickly. Rust monsters use their antennae to rust metal. So not only every time the players try to strike it with a melee weapon that's made out of metal will it be rusting their weapon, but every time they actually deliberately strike the rust monster, their weapons are going to start rusting. So they're going to either be using wooden weapons or something that's not made out of metal if they don't want to wind up losing their weapons, because that antennae can actually strike, and that's probably what it's going to do. It's probably going to use its antennae, rust the metal, and it might use its bite. I wouldn't probably do anything more than that. It's probably not going to do any biting. It's probably going to rust and eat. unless it has no other choice. As I said, if it's cornered, then it might start biting or attacking in some way. Alright, so now I want to talk about how do you deal with a situation where this particular monster is probably going to run away or not be interested in combat. So how do you actually make this interesting? Well, I'll tell you now. You show up with a lot more little rust monsters. So one rust monster is not the answer. The answer is to have a whole pack of rust monsters. Now I've got 4 rust monsters on the table here, but that's probably not enough. What you want to do is you want to have a whole bunch more. Now, whether you use a stand-in for that, it's up to you. I would go with packs of rust monsters to be effective. Otherwise, they don't stand a chance. They've got 27 hit points, so it's a half challenge. So a level 1 character might struggle with a rust monster in its early stages, and they might, lose a weapon or have a weapon destroyed or have a weapon suffer some penalties. But this is going to be more likely to be effective. Their bite is only going to cause like 5 points of damage on average. You roll an 8-sided dice and you add +1 to that. It's attack roll with a d20. You're only adding a +3 to that with your attack. So it's not likely to hit very often. In fact, it's much less likely to hit than the player's characters. And there's only if there's only one or a couple, you're only going to get a couple of rounds and the battle is over. So one rust monster is probably going to last maybe 1 or 2 rounds and it's dead with level 1 characters. If you start increasing the level, then they're going to probably last even less time. So use packs of rust monsters to be effective. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting your time. Okay, so one of the things we need to talk about is the fact that rust metal is one of the traits for the rust monster. So that means that any non-magical weapon made of metal that hits the rust monster corrodes. So it essentially says here that if it's a magical weapon, it doesn't rust it. So whether they strike the rust monster or the rust monster uses its antennae to attack, it's not going to rust metal items that are magical. That kind of sucks. That takes the scariness of the rust monster away. And this is not in the monster manual, but I would advise you to actually get rid of that. I know it sucks to lose magic items or have them damaged in some way, but that's what makes the rust monster so fearsome and so interesting, is the fact that they can affect the magical items of a party. Because really what you want is not this situation of one little creature being attacked, one rust monster, and the group cornering it and bashing it, or just moving away and peppering it with fire. Rust monsters move 40 feet, so they can move faster than the party. But in any case, if they start moving back, the chances are it's not going to be heading towards them. It'll be running away, and they'll just pepper it with fire. Ranged attacks, longbows, stuff like that. So what I want you to suggest is basically don't do that. Don't engage in that sort of thing. Use more than one creature, and make sure that its rusting ability can rust magic items. That makes it so much scarier. The other thing I wanted to point out was this creature is probably the most iconic monster in Dungeons and Dragons that I can possibly think of. And it's kind of weird that this particular creature always gets treated like a combat situation, because it's really not a combat situation. Even if you get a pack of rust monsters, like more than 4, I would go with more than 4. If you get a party of like 4 characters, then I would have more than 4 rust monsters to make it interesting. Because what you want is a situation that's more like the Benny Hill show, where you have our party running around in a circle being chased by a pack of rust monsters, round and round in circles. That's essentially what you're after. That's going to make the whole situation much more interesting. And that's probably what should be happening. They should be running away from the pack of rust monsters, not the rust monster having to run away from them or getting butchered really quickly. So that's the basics of the rust monster. I'm going to sort of finish it up here. Look, in the monster manual it talks about a single rust monster can confront a squad of orcs, and there'd be fear from the orcs. I don't think that's the case. I think orcs would actually probably just move away and throw javelins. So just bearing in mind, try not to use just one rust monster. Use more than one, and don't use them in a normal monster way. Remember, they're going after the metal. They're not really interested in biting your player's characters. Okay, look, if you found this video helpful or informative, please share, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Look, I do videos every single day, and there will be another video, something like this, not too far. I mean, I'll probably do it about the same time, at least during my holiday period. And if you want to ask any questions, do it just after this live stream, because I'm gonna hang around. Or if you're not present for the live stream, you can put it in the comments, and I'll answer those questions as best I can, as I always do. If you want to support my channel, then watching the videos is really good. I've got some other videos you might find useful. You can watch those. Or if you really want to support my channel, you'll find in the description an affiliate link. Now, if you buy online, you click on that link and you buy something online. You don't even have to buy the thing I'm linked to. You could go somewhere else after you click on that link. I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, and you support my channel so I can keep doing this sort of thing. I will probably still keep doing this sort of thing, but it's just the amount of videos that'll come out that'll change. If I can't convince the people that are around in my life that it's worth doing, then eventually it'll be hard to sort of continue with. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. All right, I've finished up my little presentation. Look, I'm going to hang around for a little while. Nobody's put any questions up as I've been talking, so either there's no questions to be asked and people were happy to watch what I presented. I know I might have repeated myself a couple of times. I tried to sort of work from my script, and but I am happy to answer questions about the Rust monster, or if I can, I'll answer questions about a different monster if you want me to. Cobbying Ham, just thanks for the videos. Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad you found it useful. Epiphanes, is it Epiphanes? Your picture is missing a hat. You're right. And the reason my little picture, because I don't have two webcams, I've only got one webcam. The reason the picture is missing a hat is I haven't had time to take a photo. I will take a photo at some point of myself. The reason I haven't done it is because I'm shooting all of this stuff early in the morning. It's about 9 a.m. in New Zealand Standard Time, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., no, 10 a.m. So everybody is still asleep. So and I don't really want to ask them to do that. I'll do that or ask them to take a photo for me and get that all sorted out. I just wanted to get this done. I've been procrastinating about doing it. I had the webcam. I was trying to figure out how to tighten up the scene so you get a nice, good close-up look of what's going on. And I will include a hat in my picture in the future. It is coming. It may not happen straight away. Probably after the holidays. I've got another, I think after the 13th of January, I'll be back to work. Well, back to doing what I normally do. I'm essentially on holiday right now. So the hat will come back. So if there's any other questions, I'll answer those. We might sort of talk, maybe I can talk briefly about some of the aspects. I mean, we talked mostly about how you would use your Rust monster and the mechanical aspects of the Rust monster. It is really quite a strange creature. I find it interesting that this particular creature is actually quite docile. It's not like an aggressive creature. Its only interest is just to find something that they can corrode, rust it, and then gobble down the rust that they create. So it's obviously going to be able to ruin things like armor and shields and weapons, but I think it's probably more likely to go after something that is a structure made out of metal. So a building, or maybe a post, or anything that has been constructed where they've used metal. And I imagine that creatures like the dwarves who use stone and metal would probably not be terribly happy with rust monsters. They'll probably have to deal with them quite a lot. You know, rust monsters, they hang out in a cave location or in dark locations. It's a monstrosity. It's got no alignment, so it's not good, it's not evil. It just does what it does. Epiphanes, you said cool. Yeah, I'm glad you liked what I've presented today. You know, if this is the sort of thing that interests people, I'll keep doing it. And I feel like doing the live stream, and then by giving the presentation reasonably quickly and swiftly, you can watch that particular part of it, live stream, ask some questions, and then later on when I get time, which has always been my hassle with editing, is I can edit this particular live stream down to a shorter version and just trim off the beginning and the end and give you a tighter, shorter video. Nottingham, what do you got here? Rust monsters are open to all kinds of Flintstone appliance jokes. Yes, Flintstone. Yes, they are. Flintstone. Like, are we? Well, hopefully we're not talking about Fred Flintstone. Please, I'm sensitive about my name. What else? Think they could work as an animal companion? You're a kidder. Oh dear, can you imagine what would happen if you had an animal companion as a rust monster was your animal companion? And I suppose it could. It's not strictly something that falls under the category of being a beast, so it's a monstrosity. So you'd have to have a dungeon master who was willing to do that. And can you imagine what would happen? The party would be so annoyed with the rust monster constantly rusting their armor and weapons that eventually they'd just butcher it. They'd probably just take it down. It would just wind up a meal at the table. So I don't think that's going to work out very well. What else you got here? For PCs, obviously. Well, yeah. No, I don't think it's going to work out. I think one of the party members is going to be quite upset with it being an animal companion in the party. It's going to last like 5 seconds. I like the way you think, though. It's pretty funny. Oh, dear. So, yeah, and the rust monster, this whole body's like covered in thick, lumpy armor. And with that long tail, which is really quite bizarre, it's got bone protrusion. So what it actually is doing with that bone protrusion, I have no idea. I'm assuming that the bone protrusions are used to maybe knock the rust off something that is rusting, or maybe to knock loose raw ore that might be trapped in stone or rock so that it can actually get at it. Maybe that's how it works. The actual mandibles, you know, its bite and so forth, obviously that's the part that's going to be doing all the eating. What do we got here? Epiphanes. How big is it? Could a halfling ranger ride it to battle? Well, it's a medium size, so I would imagine that, I suppose that's possible. I would say more likely maybe a gnome. I don't think a halfling is going to be... I think the halfling is going to be probably just a tad large for a rust monster to ride into battle. Oh dear. Oh dear. I'm glad you showed up. It certainly lightened this whole thing up. It's really, really nerve-wracking doing live stream, particularly about stuff that, you know, if I make a mistake, somebody points it out, and I always feel bad if I make a mistake. It's also awkward too, because these are supposed to be instructional videos where hopefully there aren't any errors. But obviously, like everything, there's always going to be a chance that I might make an error. And oh my gosh, I wish Jeremy Crawford would stop making alterations. I found that there's an adjustment to one of the main core rules that only happened this year for the long rest, and he published it after I'd already released my video. I'd already done all my research, I've filmed it, and of course it takes a bit of time for me to edit and put it up on YouTube. And of course now that video, which was extremely hard to do, needs corrections, which I can't do. I just don't have the time. There's so many other things to do. So now I've got a video which is not quite correct. There's which has really made life difficult. But hey, I guess it happens. Epiphanes you got here. So this halfling that's going to ride this rust monster into battle could wear leather armor and bashes its foe with a wooden club. Yes, well it could, but it doesn't solve the problem of the rest of the party who probably will be wearing armor and will have metal weapons. So yeah, it's only a matter of time before that rust monster, when it's, they're sleeping, it's going to get up and roam around. It's probably the kind of creature that does most of its feeding and hunting or searching, scavenging for metal at night, because it's got dark vision. So I would imagine it would be a creature that would actually forage at night in a subterranean location and passages and so forth. So it's not going to be something that you're going to necessarily don't notice. You're going to keep somebody up every waking hour or sleeping hour as well to make sure that it doesn't wind up rusting all of their weapons. So there's a sort of it searches out. It says here it searches out iron, steel, adamantium. Oh my gosh, can you imagine that? Rusting adamantium is such a rare metal. Mithril, and it consumes it. So it can rust adamantium, mithril, and consume it. That's frightening. That's what makes the rust monster so much fun, is the fact that it can do things that the players really don't want. Most players should be, when they see these things, they should be running away, not trying to get in and engage in some sort of combat. Which is why it's not really a very good combat monster. It's more as I said, I feel like the Rust monster is a Benny Hill show monster, where you watch the players running around in circles or just fleeing as the Rust monsters pursue them. Any more questions? It don't look like there's too many more. It seems like we're almost up. I'm going to finish up maybe in 2 minutes, and we'll just go from there. Rust monsters are rarely found in large numbers, it states here in the monster manual. And I would ignore that, because otherwise, if you really want a combat situation, or you want something where they are going to have to deal with them, you're going to have a large number of them. Small groups, it says they might hunt alone or in small groups. I still feel like that's only going to be effective against like one character, 3 of these or 4 of these, that's a small group. That's effective against one character. But as soon as you've got like a full party, just don't see that it's going to be even remotely feasible. It's just not going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. Okay, we are just about up on time, and I'm going to close off, and I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll do another video. I will probably do a how to play rather than a Dungeon Master orientated video. This has really been for the Dungeon Master. Alright, we'll see you later, guys.